So welcome everyone to College 101. I am Eleanora Ferrante. I am the owner of Square Peg Square Hole Coaching. I am a college admissions and career coach. So I basically work with people from the ages of 15 to about 25. It's typically the range of students that I will work with. Vicki?
My name is Vicki Vollweiler. I'm the owner of College Financial Prep, and I help people save money on the cost of college.
And Moira?
I'm Moira McCullough, founder of College Scoops, and I work with a whole host of students to basically provide the inside scoops and help students find the social fit. Look at the colleges from a different perspective. You know, you're always looking at it from an academic, a financial fit, but students want to know and make sure that they can find a place that they can call home. And that's what we do. We work with a whole bunch of students to get all that great information and provide it in different mediums for parents, students, educational consultants, and high school counselors.
So the combination of the three of us, we really cover all aspects of the college process. So I'm more on the academic side in terms of the applications, the essays. Vicki is making sure that the schools, you're not going to come out of there owing a ton of money because nobody wants that, right? So the financial fit, and then you have the social fit, because really what you're looking for is to find the school where your student is going to be the most engaged. Right? Because that's the place where they're going to be the most successful. So academically, will they be engaged? Socially, will they be engaged? You know, and then look, financially, we want to make sure that they're in the right spot for that. So all those aspects are really important when you're considering the list. You know, in terms of the academic considerations, I always think about what kind of a student are you, right? You know, and there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. Are you the kind of student who likes to have a discussion and really get into it within your classroom? You're the first one to raise your hand and are always talking in class. Or are you the kind that needs to sit a little bit further back? You like the lecture, you like to listen, process, and then come back, right? So, you know, it's funny, I have some quiet kids and their parents like, wow, if they're talking about you going to these big schools, the lectures are going to be huge. I'm like, you know what? But they learn best by listening, right? As opposed to participating. So sometimes big schools make sense, even for the quiet students, right? Because it gives them the opportunity that they need to listen and process. On the other hand, sometimes you want those kind of schools where you have the smaller setting so you can have discussion. And if that's how you learn best, is by the interaction. It's really important to understand those pieces. Academically, you want to be at a place where you are challenged, but can manage the workload, right? Because nobody needs to be overstressed, but you don't want to be at a place where you're overmatched, right? And it's too easy for you. Honors programs sometimes fit the bill for some of those kids, but you really want to make sure that the school provides you the information you need in a way that works for you, because you want to be engaged and you want to know that when you come out of school, that you're ready for either grad school, your career, right? That it sets you up academically to get to that space. Laura, you want to talk a little bit about the social piece?
Yeah, and I want to preface everything. I have 3 kids, and I had 2 in the class of 2021, college graduate. I now have a senior in college, and I have a freshman in college as well. So I just came through the process. And that's really why we formed College Scoops, just because of the fact that the frustration when you go to these colleges, they do a great job. They do put on a great tour, information session, and that's their job. They have a business and they do it really well. But I found that if you didn't know of, you know, a particular student on campus, you didn't have a connection, that basically students are walking away, and our pain points are like, can we pay for it? We're spending all this money and you know, can we pay for it? Academically, is it a right fit? But our students are looking at it as, will I be friends with these people? Can I live with them, learn with them, grow with them? Will I thrive outside of the classroom as much as inside? And I think once that clicked for me as a parent, we kind of looked at that aspect of the college admissions process as one that we had control over. It's the only part that you actually have control over as a parent and as a student. So I think that's why we have so much fun reaching out to students, because they were in the high schoolers' shoes just a couple years ago. So I think it's really important. And just my experience, maybe I'm the only one, but my kids sometimes don't listen to me. So by me telling them, go talk with a friend or go talk with your teacher, they're like, yeah, right, put that on the list. But this student-generated content, going to their peers or looking at information that is peer-generated from students who are there, lessons learned, and what they wish they knew to kind of just ease the anxiety and stress, I think is just so valuable. And that's something that all students should do, and we should try to encourage them. But if nothing else, there's a great resource that they can go to now for it.
And I'm going to jump on that because one of the things I have found is that, going back 2 years ago, when you wanted to find out more about a college, you had to go visit, right? Because everything online was so difficult. The tours weren't that good. And it was really hard to get the information online. It was really, you had to see it in person. And now we know that they've done a lot of work, a lot of these schools, to have virtual tours. But what I'm finding is that some are better than others. And there are some schools that I absolutely love. And when I tell the kids to go look at them online, they're like, did you see that website? That was like, there is nothing that's enticing about that school. And then I send them to College Scoops. Like, you got to go check another way of looking at them. And once they see the information from the students, sometimes it's so much more effective for the kids because it's more one-on-one for them, right? They understand it. It's really relating to who they are. So, it's really nice to have other venues for them to be able to find more information. Vicki, what about the financial side? What should we be looking at?
The financial side, I mean, you've probably heard lots of schools, they have that $75,000 or $80,000 price tag. And really, how many of us want to have to pay that or pay it back in student loans? And that's the focus with College Financial Prep, finding schools where we can lower your price tag, lower the amount that you and the students taking out in student loans, and making sure that it's a good financial fit for you. I still want your child to have, all of the opportunities, academic, socially, and otherwise, but let's make sure that it's a good financial fit too. Mm-hmm. In addition to, helping families with the financial aid forms and student loans and, the whole process, appealing those financial aid awards. But it's also very important to start the process early on with what schools are you going to apply to? Because some of those need to be, financially doable. And we discussed that early on.
Absolutely. So just a little bit in terms of some timelines, some things that you should be thinking about, as we're, a lot of the stuff that Vicki, Moira, and I are focusing on is more junior year, senior year, but freshman year is a great year for the kids to start exploring, starting to figure out who they are so that they can start to understand what socially they might be looking for in terms of the schools, getting into some of the activities, really testing the waters. Schools are always looking for the most rigorous academics that they can find for these kids, but you have to understand what that means. I get the question all the time, should I take more AP? Should I be, is that honors program enough? Should I be doing the research? And the answer is, it depends on your kid, right? Because you want the student to really engage in high school and try as many things as they can that make sense for them. That doesn't mean an application that has 30 activities, right? 2, 3, 4 activities that they really love and dive deep into is a great space. Freshman year, you can kind of explore a little bit, see what makes sense. Same thing with sophomore year. Really you want them to start to hone in a bit more on who they are, what's important to them. And it's hard because they're 14, 15, 16, right? I don't know about you, but I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And I think that that's the thing that a lot of kids think, well, we have to know what we want. And I tell them half the kids go off to school undeclared. And that's a beautiful thing. There are some really great schools that have exploratory programs, right? BU has a great exploratory, Northeastern, NC State, right? There are schools that understand that students don't always know what they want. I mean, sure, there are the kids who know that they want to be a cardiologist from the moment they were born. They are few and far between. But our kids think that that's what everybody's looking for and because that's what they hear. What they don't hear are the other kids who are also lost and confused, right? Because they don't talk about it. So, exploring, trying to figure out the things that are important for them it's a great time to do that at the beginning of high school. Little trick for parents, I highly recommend, anytime your kid achieves something, you get a certificate for something, you get that award, tuck it someplace safe because you're never going to be able to remember or find it again, right? And those are the kinds of things that the more achievements that you have and can talk about, right, that you can remember, in terms of the financial side, like if you're looking for merit awards, right, Vicki, that it's really a lot of what you've accomplished sometimes that can make a big difference. Right.
I just want to make one other comment about that undecided. There was a great tour and experience that we had where my son was undecided, my oldest one. And I remember going on a tour and the tour guide went around and asked everyone what their majors were. And people were, putting their hand up straight, engineering, and so proud. And my son, who was undecided, like could barely get his arm up. And at the end, when the tour guide, actually the admissions counselor said, is anyone undecided? And he had seen my son, like bright red face and everything. And he said, put that hand up high. That is the reason why you're coming here. You're coming here because you're curious, you want to learn, and there's nothing wrong with being undecided. And I think that kind of from a student perspective, you could see like the color come back and, just thinking like, okay, it's not unusual. I'm not an outlier. It's okay to be undecided.
Right. And to really explore, even college is a great time for that. I went to an event. It was hosted by the alumni of the school I went to, and there were a whole bunch of kids who had been accepted, and he came to find out more about it. And three of us were talking that night. One guy was a cardiologist, another gentleman was a lawyer, and they had known all the way through what they wanted. And I got up there and said, I wasn't sure. And I changed majors multiple times, and I have changed jobs multiple times, but always doing something that really fits me. And right now, I'm not sure what my next step is. When we were done, I had the longest line of students. They all wanted to talk to me because they were like, oh my God, somebody who understands, right? So I think that there's a lot to that. And then when you hit junior year, that's the year where you're starting to really visit the schools. So Moira, maybe you could talk a little bit about visiting schools. What should they be looking for? What are the key things to think about?
Exactly. Well, and I would also say too, I think even first off, like a conversation with your kids are different. Some kids are ready to go earlier. Other kids that this light switch doesn't go on, and there's no point in visiting a college. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time, energy, and stress. So make sure that your student is ready. But when they are, there's a couple key things that you can do to kind of de-stress the process and actually have a ton of fun, which is what we did. We ended up having just a lot of fun just because we had the right mentality in terms of, plan for it. A lot of kids and parents or people would say, have your kids sign up for their tours and information sessions. I don't know about anyone on this call, but like a lot of kids don't know what their parents are, like their work schedules. So they're going to sign up on like a Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon to go to Syracuse. That's like 6 hours away. So, that was one discussion I had in terms of roles and responsibilities. Like, how can I help you in terms of going to visit colleges? What would be most effective? So, where do you want to go? I can do the, planning the logistics. Maybe parents can take on the role of planning the college and signing up for the tours and information sessions. But definitely, a couple key points. We found, a Google Doc spreadsheet was really helpful. List down the colleges you're looking at, put down, information on tours and information sessions. Bring a journal, or the kids have the phones nowadays. Before you leave campus, write down the first 3 impressions that you have. And parents, I'm at fault for it. I made the mistake of saying, didn't you love blah, blah, blah? That school went down from being in the top 5 to like not even on the second list. So try to like contain yourself because they're trying to process it again. And it's really hard kind of to take it all in and kind of emotionally. So, that's the thing that I learned. I think the students are trying to emotionally connect. So how can you help them? Be organized, ask how you can participate in terms of the logistics aspect. But I also found that I gave a role to students too. What do you want to see and do that's not college related? And I would always recommend anyone, even if your kid doesn't want to do that, surprise them with a visit that's around the surrounding community and do something that's not college related, because going to college is also about the surrounding area, which was really helpful. If you have a classmate or a former teammate that's on campus, it's great to have that student reach out to them and meet them for a cup of coffee. And again, as a parent, I really try to control myself, and I would let them go on that visit, but have that special time with that student alone and have them peer-to-peer, student to student, kind of ask those questions without having a parent alongside. So those were some of the tips that I think our student ambassadors have also told us that it was really helpful, for them when they were looking at colleges to do some of those little tips and tricks and strategies along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a great hint here. my own kids, my son was at Boston College, and I used to rent them out to people all the time. They were like, oh, we're going to visit BC. And I would tell them, go call Thomas. He'll give you a different tour. He'll give you a different feel for it. An opportunity to ask those kind of questions, see what the dorms really are like, and to get a good feel for everything. One of the things that I'm finding this year is that a lot of the students, because they haven't been on any kind of campus, my seniors are more nervous, and they're scared about it. I have one student who the only college experience he had was to be on Ohio State on move-in day. Can you imagine? Ohio State is huge. There's so many students. It's madhouse on move-in day. And he came home, you could see the deer in headlights. Right? And so, I'm having his mom take him to some local schools just to get another feel, because it's hard.
Well, that's a great point. I would say start local first, because you can learn a lot from going around to local schools, small, medium, and large. And that's how you kind of start it. Not everyone also has the ability to travel and visit schools, take a plane. It's another financial, stress point. So there is a timing of the tour, and when your students ready, but also you can do a lot local and kind of fine tune that list, or at least what they like and they don't like. And actually what they don't like is as valuable, if not more, than what they like, is another key.
Yeah, Moira, let me, to your point about the financial, people are always asking about visiting schools before they even send in applications and if it's warranted. And what is it, demonstrating interest? You don't need to actually visit the school to demonstrate interest. So save your money. I mean, you can talk to, Eleanora more about, ways to demonstrate interest, but you don't have to start emptying your pockets now.
Absolutely. And, to that point, Vicki, right now is a great time, especially for seniors and any of the schools who allow juniors to do this. Colleges are now coming to the schools again. Last year, that didn't happen. I've already had about a quarter of my kids do on-campus visits at their high schools, right? And I think those are a great opportunity for the students to get to talk. First of all, it's the admissions rep who's probably going to be the one reading your application, because they're the ones that usually come to the school. You get a chance to interact with them, ask some questions about the school, find out more. A lot of times, my students are the only ones in those rooms. So they're getting that one-on-one, or maybe like 2, 3, 4-on-1. Binghamton in New York is a big one. So of course, there's going to be a lot of people in that space, but some of the smaller schools or the less known in our area schools, you get really good information from that. And that's a great way to demonstrate interest and cost you nothing. So it's a good thing. So Vicki, in terms of that, thinking about the financial side a little bit, and when I look at applications and I think about what's important for me, what I showcase on the application, I know that it ties in a lot with what might lead into merit aid for some of the students.
Right, definitely.
So you want to talk a little bit about the activities and some of the things that might generate some merit aid or things to think about?
Sure. So merit aid is awarded for a number of reasons. I mean, just think of the colleges as like businesses. They have seats to fill. It's like a product to sell. They need to, sell all those seats. So, academics is certainly a big reason to award merit scholarships. Even though most of the schools are test optional, it's still important to take the SAT and SATs, because a lot of the schools will use those scores to award merit scholarship money, in addition to your high school grades. Let me just let somebody in. In addition to that, perhaps your child is a great French horn player, and there's a school that's looking to add, a French horn player to their band. They may want to entice your student to attend that school with a merit scholarship. Or say your child is applying to a school in a different geographic region, and they're looking to expand their reach and bring in a more diverse student body. They may entice your student with merit scholarship money. Same thing with a major, or a new program that the college is offering, if they want to fill those seats in that program. So there are lots of different reasons that a college may offer you merit scholarship money. Just kind of look at it as they're putting the school on sale for you. So it's good to look for different reasons as to why the colleges would want to entice your student to go there.
Absolutely. And then a lot of times the application is a great space, obviously, to talk about who you are and what you've done. I always say when you talk the applications, Common App is the most prevalent one that we use these days. And I'm happy that many more schools jumped on this year. It has made my life easier as well as my students, right? Of course, then sometimes you apply to too many schools. I see that with kids because like, oh, I can just keep hitting send. It's not what we're looking for, right? You want to make sure you're hitting send for the right schools. But the application is a place for you to talk about who you are as a student, who you are as a community person, right? So your activities are a great space to talk about the impact that you've made, right? A lot of kids waste that activity space because they just list that they were a member of this, you know, that they attended meetings, that they don't know how to describe themselves, right? So it's really important to talk about the impact that you've made. What were your responsibilities? If you had any leadership positions, right? And, you know, you need to be clear, not everybody has leadership positions. And I always tell the kids, when you look at Harvard, a lot of those people were class president getting into Harvard. Guess what? Only one person can be class president when they get there, right? So you need people who are part of the community as well as leading. There's lots of different ways to show leadership. It doesn't have to be with a title. The essays are really important because this is where you can elaborate on your strengths and really show parts of you that the application doesn't give you enough room for. Common App activity description is 150 characters, including punctuation and spaces, not a lot of space, right? And so if you worked on a great research project or you did a community service activity, I had somebody who did this great, she did a toiletry drive. I had another kid who did a diaper drive during the pandemic when people were in need of things. So we took the space in their essays to describe that and talk about some of the things that you didn't have enough room for in the activities, right? Because you really want to highlight all these great aspects of your kids. Colleges are much more holistic these days because like the beauty of the pandemic is that while it was hard to get to take the SAT and ACT and that caused a lot of stress, the colleges had to rethink what was important, right? So essays became really important. I had some schools that before we used to say, we don't even bother reading the essay. Not the case anymore, right? They would put so much focus on the numbers of the SAT and ACT, but we all know there are plenty of people who don't test well, right? It's not how you are, how you think, right? And you don't test well. Sometimes you don't have the time for the prep or the resources for the prep, right? So this has taken some of that away. Look, if you can still test and you test well, you're sending those scores, right? Because there are some schools, the public universities in Georgia and in Florida, they still want scores. And Vicki, I know you can talk to this, you know, sometimes merit aid does come based off those scores, right? Alabama still.
Yeah, definitely.
You get high scores, they're happy.
Yeah, many schools, you know, certainly many of the larger schools will still look at test scores and grades just because it's an easy way for them to delineate as opposed to having to actually, you know, read those essays, you know, just those numbers, they're able to award scholarships, and it makes, you know, when you have that many students, it's an easier way to go through the data.
Correct. And, you know, and you look at how many applications came in last year, you know, UCLA had 140,000 applications. NYU had over 100,000 applications. I don't know about you, but I couldn't fit that many applications in my house. Right. And so it's overwhelming when you think about that. So what helps you to stand out? Right. And so it is your essay, it is your activities, right? Those are the kinds of things that really give you an opportunity to do that. You know,
and also taking the ACT, the SAT, because the schools, so many of them have gone test optional. Sometimes the students can stand out that they put in the effort to do it. You know, not every student is even putting in the effort anymore. So I think that's another way to stand out as well.
Yeah. So I've got one of the questions here today. It's asking, should you use the full amount of characters on the activities? If you can. I don't like to leave any white space behind. Right. So I use every bit of room on the application. That being said, don't make things up. Right. If your student once went to a soup supper and served people, that's nice, but that's not an activity that they're really involved with. Right. So you want to make sure that it's authentic. So if you can fill all 50, by all means, and there are ways to 150 characters rather. So, and there are ways to shorten things and compress them to get all the information in. It takes a little bit of work, but you get good at that. But, you know, and the activities are also the kind of thing that what you're doing now, you might be interested in doing when you get to college. Moira, do you want to talk a little bit about how they can find some of those activities and see what might be good fits for them on that, in that way?
Well, I think when you talk about the activities and having that conversation too earlier, when you talk about like even as a freshman or a sophomore, just having that conversation in terms of what do you like to do, what interests you, what makes you curious. Those are all things that as they continue the college search, and we always say, go on social media. There's a lot on social media on the schools. What they have, every club and activity has a social media handle. You learn a lot about communities, about groups, and about people on social media. That's another great resource. Go and connect with them. If you're an acapella junkie and you want to think about going in and doing that in school, like reach out. Those clubs are there. And you also mentioned about the admissions representatives. They're there and they've never been more, I think, approachable than they have been now. So taking that resource and asking those questions, food was a big thing for our kids. They really wanted to be around good food in a surrounding community that had good food. Their question was the admissions rep was like, your best friend comes into town. Where would you take them? You've now had a different level of conversation with a admissions person that, believe it or not, it's going to stand out, because that's different than something that you may be able to find very easily on the website with 1, 2, 3 clicks. So I think those are different ways that you can really further your knowledge about a particular college, more so than just gleaning from a website, and connect with the student community, student body who's there. These students, also these college students, we hear it all the time from our student ambassadors. They can't imagine being the class of 2021 or the class of 2020. My class of 2021 kid is at a school that he did not visit. He did not tour and information. So he had to go out and gather that research from somewhere else. So I think college students are aware, they're there, they're helpful resources, and they're available and willing to help high school students.
Yeah, it's true. I'd say about a third of my sophomores never got to visit the campus before they got there, because they thought once we get in, then I'll go visit. Okay. So it's been interesting to watch, how that's impacted a lot of the students this year with that. And there are a lot of people who got to the school and realized they didn't do their research and it wasn't the right fit.
Well, and also when you talk about financials too, I mean, there is so much that goes into it in terms of visiting a college takes a lot of time and money, and that is something that you want to go and you want to be prepared. You want to make sure that you make it the most valuable, impactful visit that you can, and that means reaching out to different communities and organizations and students that you can gather some of those questions that are causing a student angst or that they're excited about and they want to explore more, and be able to then take that back into the YS essay and kind of show that interest and demonstrated interest about what they'll contribute to that community.
Absolutely, because the why us essay is huge. And I love what Emory says about that. They're like, please don't tell us that we're warm, that we're in Atlanta. We know. Like, believe me, we know where we are and we know what those pieces are, right? So it's, that's one of those spaces where you really have to think about, what is it that I want from a college and how does this school check those boxes, right?
And I think that's a different mentality in some ways. I mean, think about it. The students have worked so hard to get to where they are. Parents are working so hard to sacrifice financially to send the students there. This is the one piece where you're almost like in the driver's seat and kind of put them in an interview position and ask them, why should I spend the next 4 years at the school? And I think sometimes once students or parents, if the students can get that mentality and ask those questions, then all they need to do is once, and then they'll start to ask that question each and every time. I think you see it with all your students, probably. They get more confident and think, you're right, I am a valuable member of the community and I could do X, Y, Z. And it just helps them to get more focused and articulate about how they're going to make an impact, for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we've kind of gotten to this mindset that, the colleges are the ones that are holding all the chips, so to speak, but you are the consumer, right? And the schools really do need to say that they are right for you and that they will give you what you need, right? We've kind of let the colleges have all the power in this situation, but our job is to help you find ways where you get the power back. right? So that you've made some smart choices in terms of where you're applying, so that financially, Vicki helps to make sure that, you know, the schools do make sense for you, that you understand what you're looking for, and it works.
Yeah, let me jump in there. One thing I encourage, so much encourage, is that parents and kids have a talk early on in the process. You know, normally we as parents don't talk to our kids about, you know, our personal finances, but I think it's very important to say, you know, either how much is saved up in your 529 account, or how much is saved up to be able to pay for college, you know, what additional funds you may be able to put towards it every year. I think it's important for the children to know the limitations, the expectations, work towards a common goal, because, you know, yeah, they can have their heart set on, you know, school ABC, but how many times does it happen where, you know, decision day is May 1st, and that last week of April, the parents, you know, are all upset because they have to tell the child, we're sorry, we just can't make it work. You know, the parents are upset, the child is upset. So I think it's important early on in the process, when you're looking at these schools, you know, that you're also considering the financial component.
Or also, Vicki, too, in terms of once you're there, right? Can you get back home as readily as you can? We saw that happen last year where students had to come home, and that was another financial consideration that no one ever kind of anticipated. So it definitely is something, even though you can pay for it, what's the full cost of attendance? And do you want to, as a student, only come home for the Christmas, if it's a flight away and that's the financial constraint, that your son or daughter may give you a different answer. And we've seen it change from last year to this year in terms of what those answers are. Kids some want to stay closer to home.
Absolutely. And, you know, and you think about too, it depends on what your student is going to do when they get there. Like I said, my son is a fencer, and so, you know, we wanted to watch him fence, right? And so then it's a matter of, we have to be able to pay to get there to see as well. Can you make those kind of those events happen and be there for your kid the way you want to be? You know, so there's a lot of pieces that you need to look at. You know, to get a basic understanding, Vicki, is the net price calculator, right, on the school websites. Yeah, not always the most accurate, but can give you a feel for, and at least an initial feel for what some of the schools might be. Sometimes it's very eye-opening if you've never done it before, and if you've got, you're not really sure what college might cost. It's a great way to at least get some information and start to get a feel for it. Understanding it's not going to be exactly what you pay, but it can give you some background.
Sorry, one of the feedback that we've had from our students too is, wow, I didn't know how expensive it was. I don't like the food here, or I'm in a city. I didn't realize that, you know, Chipotle was $15 for every lunch. That's a big factor. So I think that's another one. That's a conversation you have, again, with students in terms of narrowing that college list.
Absolutely. So in terms of some, I'll call it the operations of it, Patty's asking, you know, does it make more sense to use the Common App or a school-specific app? And you're right, Alabama does have their own application. And the answer is all schools that have a school app as well as the Common App, and some of them even have the Coalition app as well. If they tell you that all of them are available, all of them are available. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. Your data is going to get to their system the same way. Sometimes there's a slight advantage to using the school-specific app, in just the sense that sometimes it makes it a little easier for some of the essays or some of the information that they want. But if you're inputting all your data into the Common App already, it saves you time, right? That's the whole idea of the Common App, so that you don't have to do it multiple times. Because think about it, your resources or your time and your energy, right? And so you want to think about how you use that, because if I can save time and not fill out another application, I could be working on an essay, right? And doing something that's a little bit more important towards the whole process with that. You know, people also ask the question about, you know, when's the best time to apply? Is it early action? Do you want to do it early? Do you want to do it late? Some schools, if you're not in by their early action deadline, you're not getting money, right? I mean, and then some schools are pretty upfront about that. Others are not. And there's always more money upfront than there is later in the process. Vicki, do you want to talk a little bit about timelines for the things that you need to do on the financial side?
Sure. So FAFSA opens October 1st. That's the big, huge day. As Eleanora was just saying, imagine each school, I like to do an example, you know, a big pot of money. And then as time goes on, the pot that the school has gets smaller and smaller. So that's why it's so important to apply early on. Many of the schools, not 100%, but a lot of the schools, while it sounds counterintuitive, they'll award merit scholarship money to people that file financial aid forms. So I always recommend that everybody file the financial aid forms. There are many reasons too, beyond merit money. If your child is going to need any student loans, you can get the lowest cost interest rate by filling out the FAFSA form. If you need need-based aid, you want to apply for it, obviously you do that with the FAFSA form. Also, I like to say that the FAFSA application is almost like an insurance product. Say something happens, whether it's a divorce, a job loss, an illness, something that causes a downward change in the household. At least if you have the FAFSA form on file, it is possible to ask the schools if they can relook at your situation and make any adjustments in the cost. So I always recommend everybody files FAFSA.
Okay. And what about the CSS profile?
So CSS Profile is another financial aid application. It is not needed by every school. It is requested by about 350, 400 predominantly private schools, not 100%, but predominantly private schools. It is a more holistic view of your finances than FAFSA. With CSS Profile, they take an even deeper dive into the information that they're requesting. They'll want to know about your house, the mortgage, the amount you paid, the equity, the date you purchased. Sometimes some of the schools want to know about the cars that you own and if they're owned or leased and how much, how much you owe on those. They'll also dig much deeper into your retirement accounts, and they'll look for every last dollar. And also with divorce situations, that's when it can get a little trickier. And it's on a school by school basis as to what the rules are in terms of what information is needed. Sometimes it may be best to apply to a school that requires FAFSA only. When I work with clients, depending on their situations, and everybody has their own situation, whether you're married, you're widowed, you're divorced, you're this, you're that. You recently lost a job, say due to COVID. Everybody has their own situation. So it's important to think strategically about where to apply to college. And that may also include about what financial aid forms are going to be requested and what might be to the family's benefit.
Yeah, and I just remember doing them for my kids, and I never want to do the CSS profile again. It's one reason I don't touch the financials, and I'm happy to steer people towards you. There's a lot of information that you need to pull together. But I think to that point, that's why doing it early makes sense, right? And when you think about a timeline, so freshman year of high school, you're exploring. Sophomore year of high school, you're still exploring, right? And figuring that out. You are starting to gather the pieces of information that will eventually lead towards your application. You hit junior year, maybe you're taking tests, right? And you're working through that piece of it. You are starting to explore some of the schools. You're starting to get a little bit of a better handle on what you might be interested in. Senior year and the summer leading into senior year, like that's when I spend the most time with my seniors, obviously with my students, that's the bulk. Right now I'm working, I feel like 24/7 with my students, right? Because there's trying to pull in all the information, getting everything together so that they're ready and can apply. Because keep in mind, you see these deadlines that are out there, early action November 1st. Well, most high schools want you to submit at least 2 weeks before, so that guidance has enough time to submit all their data and get everything in on their side. If you have teachers you're asking for letters of recommendation, you want to do that end of junior year, give them a chance to write them over the summer, right? You don't want to be knocking on their door October 1st and say, oh, I forgot I need to do this, right? So those kind of things, you want to be proactive and getting them done. And I know it's hard for the kids because, end of junior year, like, oh, right. I barely survived. If they're taking APs, they got through that. Maybe they're taking SATs and the IB work, and they're like, I just need a break. But I really encourage my students to think a lot over the summer. It's a great time to start processing what do you want to write about, to start thinking about your activities, pulling your resumes together, right? To use that time effectively so that you're not stressed. And I have a few students right now, like I have so much to do, everything's just kind of come back in terms of their schoolwork. If you're taking a lot of really rigorous classes. And the nice thing is I'm able to say to a couple of them, take a week off. Like, what? Like, you did all this pre-work. So, and I do that with you on purpose because I know that the first 2 weeks of school, you're like, oh, this is easy. Third week, you're like, oh, right. And they get slammed. And especially this year, because a lot of kids did not have a full week the first 2 weeks of school, right, with all the holidays and whatnot. So this week, the look on their faces is priceless, right? Because they're done. And I'm like, you got 2 more days of school this week. I hate to tell you, right? So, being proactive, and I know a lot of kids don't love doing that. Procrastination is key. And especially what I find, I don't know about you, Moira, if you see this with your own kids, but like in late August, early September, it's that deer in headlights look for the students who are suddenly realizing I'm about to be a senior. College is coming. I'm actually not going to be here a year from now. So all of their safety nets, they get really afraid because like all their safety nets are disappearing.
Absolutely.
So, right. And it's scary for them.
Well, that's, I think the emotional kind of takes over. And like you said, you're a deer in headlights. And I also think that, the senior year is so important that fall academically. So to the extent that you can, as you said, there's a timeline for parents, there's a timeline for students. If you can kind of motivate and get that done as early as you can so that you can really focus and finish strong as in the fall. And what happened last year, unfortunately, was that given the scenario, there were obviously the wait list, scenario. So kids were still pushing hard through spring semester, which I don't know, probably I never saw that with my other kids. They were locked and done, but these guys went through quite long because of the wait list scenarios. So that was just something that, to the extent that you can get things done beforehand, you'll be emotionally ready for that, and you'll produce a better product. Because it's a tiring. I would only say, like, it should be, again, this is really tiring, stressful for students and parents. As a parent, I would just say I thought my third would be easier, and it wasn't. Every child is different. Every scenario is different. The one thing I would say is, it is the last year of high school or 2 years, and you don't want this process to overwhelm and take over your whole family life, so that all you remember are the conversations on, college. There should be some enjoyment of the last high school year. So however you can manage that. And I just think having conversations with your open communications with your students they'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it in the end. And think about it. You're spending a lot of money, so you might as well have some fun when you end up getting to that final decision where the students are like, yes, I'm going to X, and it was their decision. And they came to that through support of us.
Absolutely. And that's really the thing, right? You want them on May 1st to have a t-shirt they're proud of.
Right.
And they're all excited about. And one last thing I just want to mention in terms of the timeline, Moira, you got me thinking about this, because early action doesn't make sense for everybody, because sometimes your grades, maybe junior year, weren't so great. I have a lot of kids that had that happen to them. I had somebody who failed gym last year. How do you fail gym? Right? Because it's just the way the process was for them. They were, it was so difficult and they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. So a lot of them, their grades might have tanked a little bit. So a lot of times it's more helpful to wait for regular decision, because then you can showcase your first semester grades. And if those are on the upswing, that's a beautiful thing. If they're not on the upswing, get your applications in early and don't, nobody will have.
And the partner with that is, if your student really doesn't know, a large number of students transfer. So you want to avoid that financially, you want to avoid that emotionally, you want to avoid that. So if the scenario is the student really doesn't know, then that's okay. It may be harder to get in regular decision, but that's not impossible. And that should not dissuade them from going ED or going EA and not being excited about that that choice.
Let me say this though, ED, do not apply if you do not want to pay full price. You know, you really need to know what your expected family contribution, and then what it's going to, you need to know more than just the expected family contribution, but you know, what those numbers are going to likely look like for your family, because if you apply ED, it's a binding contract, and Eleanor could speak more to that. But, you know, to me, don't take the financial risk, you know, apply early action all you want, but not ED.
Yeah, I typically have about one student a year who absolutely positively knows that that is the right space for them. And the parents are like, yeah, have fun. You know, it's not a lot of people who can afford to do that. And honestly, it puts the ball back in the college's court, and it takes the power away from you, because now you're committed to that school, right? And sometimes that's great, and it's smart to do. And people will say to me a lot of times, well, the ED acceptance rates are higher. Understand what's in that ED acceptance pool. It recruited athletes, recruited students of any kind, really. Legacy is not as big a thing any longer, but it's still a little bit of a piece to that, right? So the numbers are skewed because the students who are in that pool, the colleges oftentimes know they want them already, right? So, you know, yes, it's a higher piece, but also understand that now they are filling a class and they know you're committed. So boom, 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 they're done. They may take a good portion of their class with that, but they know you're committed financially. They don't have to go looking. They don't have to wonder what their yield will be, because ED, the school's yield is 100% pretty much, right? You say you want to come, you have to come. Right? We let you in. So it's good for the schools. It takes your power away. I know we're coming up on 8:20 here, so I just want to be cognizant of time for everybody. I see another question here about teacher recommendations. Are they mandatory? The answer is it depends. You have to look at the schools. Some schools require them. Typically, your top tiers are going to insist on having teacher recommendations. A lot of schools, though, are more flexible about it these days. You can find out specifically about each school by going to their websites, and also on the Common App. When you're in there, it will tell you how many are required and if there are any are optional. I know it was hard last year. I think what the admissions people are realizing is that the letters of recommendation are important, but they may not be as robust as they would like. So sometimes what's useful for the schools, it'll take an other recommendation. So if you have a relationship with somebody you used to work with one of your advisors for a club or an activity, if you have done some work on the outside volunteering, those people can provide letters of recommendation for you just as easily as people inside. And that can give another piece of the puzzle. You don't want your aunt, your grandparents to write the letter. That's not what they're looking for, right? But you're looking for somebody who knows you well and can speak to your character. If you're an athlete, your coach who has seen you on the field. Right. So if you do a lot of volunteer work at the library, you can ask the person there. Right. So there are lots of different ways to get the character references that you're looking for. I'm just checking to see if there are any last questions that are coming in. Ladies, do you have any last pieces that you see questions have come to you directly that you want to make sure we answer?
Hi, Eleanora. It's Natalie. How are you?
Hi, Natalie. Good. How are you?
Great. Thank you. I think this was very well done by the three of you. And I know people who probably would appreciate hearing it that might not have, I know you recorded the meeting. So is this something that a link like that I could share with others, or I don't know how that works, or how would,
Dawn,
Yes,
how
it's
would
been,
I
why did
get
you go to
people to
Burger
hear
King?
this? What's that?
No, I think Kathleen, if you just make sure you're on mute, please.
Oh, okay.
yes, it's being recorded. Give us a day or so to get the link out to everyone.
Okay, and I could share that with others, because I
Yes.
think that's something I think this information, the way you presented it is all important information, and from the three different people, I do think. And I just wasn't sure, now that I heard it, I know that I really think people would benefit from this. And all right,
Thank you.
that's all. Yeah.
So you
All
know what, to your point, Natalie, I'm actually going to share our contact information. So it's up on the screen now. So by all means, if anybody has any questions about any of our pieces, feel free. You can call us, you can email us, you can check out our websites and get additional information. If you reach out to one of us, we're always in contact with the others and happy to pass it along to other people. If you would like, we we put together a college admissions timeline. So if you're interested in getting a copy of that, just shoot one of us a text or an email, and we'll make sure we get that to you so that you can see what are all the different moments in the process and what you should be doing at different times.
As far as the financial piece, if anybody's interested, I always do a brief little consultation, just like a 15-minute appointment, just to talk about your situation, your needs, and to create an initial game plan for moving forward. So if anyone's interested in reaching out, please feel free.
And highly recommend, if you haven't already checked out College Scoops, you should go do that, because there's a lot of great colleges on there and you can get a good feel for what the kids really think of their schools, right? And I think that's a whole different ball game than what the admissions people tell you, and also what the tours will tell you, because Moira, I'm sure you can speak to this, but a lot of those kids, they are trained by professionals to give those college tours.
Exactly. Ours is so unscripted. It's just so great. The testimonials that we get from students that are trying to help, their peers from start to finish, whether it was during the high school process or when they first get to school, the insight that they share, and it's from the heart, and it's trying to help their fellow students, fellow peers, just kind of, survive. I had a whole bunch of testimonials and I was reading them, and I'm just like, they're doing this because they want to help and they want to de-stress the process for students. We do have a whole host of student Q&A videos, which, as Eleanor said, they're just really great. I watch them. I'm like, geez, I didn't know that about Wesleyan. I wish I had gone there. I didn't know that about Northwestern. We have a whole host of student Q&A videos. We have podcasts where we bring on experts like Vicki and Eleanor to answer the questions that we're not an educational consultant, nor do we want to be. We are the student-generated part of the whole college life process. So we do have a sample interactive guide that we just launched interactive guides and put all of our student-generated content on those guides. And we have one that's a sample guide on the website that gives everyone a real insight. And it's great. The feedback we get, our students are looking at it through their lens, parents are looking at it through their lens. So it helps out both parties. So
absolutely. Yeah, and I think about what it is that we offer. And I often wish that my job did not exist, right? And that it was simple enough to go through the process and you didn't really need our help. But at the end of the day, really, if you want to make sure that you have the most options that make the most sense, that really will give your child the best chance to be engaged and have a great 4 years, because we only want it to be 4 years. We don't want it to be more than that, right? It's helpful to speak to somebody who has the knowledge, the experience that can guide your child and guide you to going the right way, right? As my tagline is, you want to find the right fit. And that's what it's really all about. And that's really what the three of us offer, is we're just looking to help you find the right fit. So by all means, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to the three of us. We're here to help, always interested in, making sure that we get all the kids right where they want to be. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing a kid post on social media wearing their t-shirt come May 1st. So we thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And we have a great night, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.